Hi everyone, welcome to this video. So today I'm going to be teaching you how to play chess, how the pieces move, what are some really simple strategies you can use to get a leg up in your first few chess games. So we're going to go ahead and get into this game here. So the white pieces go first. Each player makes one move per turn. So I'm going to go ahead and play pawn to e4, and the idea with this move is we want to move our pawns into the center just to control some space in the middle. You can see here our pawns are facing each other diagonally, and pawns are actually able to capture diagonally like this. The piece that just took the pawn is called the queen, and the queen's a very powerful piece. It can move horizontally and diagonally any number of squares. Now the next piece I'm going to move out is called the knight, and the knight moves in an L shape. So the knight's actually able to jump over other pieces. As you can see here, I'm kind of making this L shape there. So my knight's able to jump over and sort of land down at that L there. So that noise you heard there is my king getting put in check by the enemy queen. So the way you win chess is if you make a check on the king that can't be blocked or avoided, that's then checkmate. So in this case, it's not checkmate. I can block the check nice and easily. So I'm just going to move my bishop to block. And the computer is moving their queen around. So you can see I've got a lot of pieces out. The computer hasn't brought many pieces out at all. So a principal way to play chess is to try to get your pieces out nice and early. Now, as you can see, my bishop is lined up with the queen, and bishops have this sort of diagonal scope here. So they can only move in diagonals, but they can move as far as they want. So I'm going to go ahead and capture that queen, because a queen is worth more than a bishop. See, the opponent's made that L-shaped capture there. The next move I'm going to do is what's called castling. So the idea with castling is to get your king out of danger and get it tucked away. And it's also a good way to get your rook in the game, which is the castle looking piece there. So the way you castle is the king moves over 2 squares first, and then the rook will hop over, but online it'll do it for you just by moving the king to that square. Normally kings can only move 1 square at a time, but when they're casting, they can move that extra square. Before I push my pawn to get my bishop out, I'm actually going to move this pawn just to keep that knight locked away on the edge of the board. So usually it's not a good idea to keep your knights out there, but this knight is able to reroute to the c5 square. And then I'm going to develop my bishop. So developing is basically moving your pieces to more advantageous positions where they have more scope to impact the game and help to control squares. I'm going to go ahead and capture that bishop. So Jimmy's made a bit of a bishop sacrifice for no real reason. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move my rook onto that sort of open lane there where it's able to do a little bit more than if it's just tucked behind my pawns. Next move I'm going to give is a knight check. So I've checked the king, but the king's able to run away. But that's fine, because I can take this pawn. The rooks are sort of able to move in straight lines, not diagonally, just up and down. And what I want to do is protect my knight or retreat my knight so it can't be captured by the rook. So I've got a few options. The most aggressive is probably just capturing this pawn, just to keep the pressure on a little bit. And I might even move it back. And that's called a tempo. So by attacking the rook, which is a little bit more valuable than the knight, I've actually gained what's called a tempo, where it almost forces the opponent to react, and I basically have kind of gained an extra move in a way. I don't want to move my knight back there, just because if he captures my knight, then I'll have a triple pawn structure, which isn't considered optimal. So that's not a move. I'm just going to go back to the middle, and knights are usually pretty good in the middle. So another weird piece sacrifice from the computer there. So what you want to make sure of is that anything that you want to try to capture, make sure that there isn't something defending it, or you will lose a piece, like Jimmy did there. I'm going to put my queen in the center now. And that's usually a pretty good idea because the queen's very powerful. You just don't want to bring the queen out too early, or you'll kind of end up like what Jimmy did before, where the queen was kind of floating around, not really doing anything too practical, and ended up getting attacked and captured. So I'm going to give a check here. Jimmy's able to block that check with the knight. So what I might do is, rather than trading immediately, I'm going to try to get my rook into the game. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to open up this file by trading this pawn off. And he's just unable to move that knight because it's pinned. I'm going to trade now because I can actually win a piece. So the knight that was defending this knight is now gone. So I'm going to capture that. So my knight's attacked again. I'm just going to simply move it back into the middle. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to advance my pawn. And I have the option here to promote that pawn, where that pawn will actually become a queen if I can get that all the way to the end. I don't want to do that just yet, however, because the bishop is actually controlling that diagonal. So first, I'm going to be pretty fancy and I'm going to try to kick that bishop away. Now I've pinned the bishop to the king, so there's no option left but for the bishop to be captured. And then I'm going to simply move my rook out of the way. I'll just put it here for now. And then I'm going to promote to a queen, and it gives you these options of what pieces you want. It's relatively unusual that you want to under-promote, which would be to a bishop, a knight, or a rook. Sometimes if you have a winning endgame, you can just promote to a rook anyway. There are occasional situations where it is actually more beneficial to under-promote, like if you need to give a knight check or avoid sort of stalemating the enemy king. And a stalemate is where the opposition has no legal moves that they can make, but they're not in check. So basically they have no possible moves, so the game just ends in a draw. And sometimes games will just end in draws as well. Not necessarily by stalemate. But for example, if all the pieces get captured on the board and it's just two kings, or if it's like a king and a bishop, where it's not actually possible to get into that position to checkmate. So I'm going to go ahead and promote. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring my pieces in to try to checkmate that enemy king there. And I'm going to capture that with check. I'm just trying to look for the fastest checkmate. I think it might be this, and there we go. So we beat Jimmy. 3 stars, and hopefully I've explained pretty much every single rule. Well, not every single rule, but certainly the beginner rules that I can think of. So hopefully that's helpful to your chess journey. And thanks for watching. Let me know how you go with these tips.